Well, guys, it's time to add some more content to the YouTube channel. And what better time than to do something I'm really passionate about? I'd say it says a lot about me that I just got Elden Ring, and I'd rather be making a video on this fucking 12-year-old godforsaken game. But homie over here, he said a lot of good points, and I'm gonna get into this. So we're on the channel Josh Strife Hayes, and this is pretty interesting because this is the first time in a long time that we got a person with a really big channel actually creating a Realm of the Mad God video. So let's start off with the introduction, and I'm gonna react to things as we go along.
Realm of the Mad God is a roguelike. You play as far as you can with one life, and when you die, you restart and try to get a little further. If you get far enough, you'll gain slight upgrades on each subsequent attempt. It is the self-proclaimed evolution of the traditional MMORPG gameplay. No longer will players be confined by such pathetic principles as a consistent character or an established story. Or the worst design choice of all, needing to actually play the game. No, those archaic design documents are burning by the metaphorical wayside, and in their place, this. This is the bright, shining future of the genre, apparently. Never again will the player be held back by petty, insignificant things like story or character arcs or NPC motivation or knowing what the hell you're doing or why you're doing it or even where you are in the Zerg rush of players. Swarming the map like locusts as everyone spams whatever particle effective arranged attack they have into the pixely blobs we know only as the enemy. Knowing what you are doing or why you are doing it or where you are is pointless. Consistency is a relic of a bygone age. All hail the MMO evolution. Repetition is freedom. Freedom is repetition. Then die and restart and try to hail a little better. Repeat ad infinitum. Enjoy Realm of the Mad God.
Alright, I have to cut him off. Subscribe to his channel, that's what he's gonna say. Uh, but, I really enjoyed this video. I don't want to sound like I'm hating on it, but, I don't know, man. He sounds pretty condescending. I mean, I don't blame him. You've seen lots of fucking posts on the Reddit about people shitting on the game. Hell, he's gonna show comments on the Steam page of people saying not to play, I wouldn't follow him for feeling pretty insane. But, he spends a lot of time explaining the game, but I want to really get into the meat and potatoes of the subject. So I guess let's first skip ahead to him talking about the start of the game,
God, it's on Steam and it's free, so let's give it a go. It does indeed describe itself in the Steam description as the next evolution of the traditional MMORPG. So
this is actually something that was funny to me. If you go into the Steam page, I never realized how fucking how much the game toots their own horn, Let me go to the store. Let's see. Team up with dozens of players and battle through Realm of the Mad God, Oryx, with a retro 8-bit style. Realm is the evolution of traditional MMO gameplay. I guess that's why he's kind of condescending, and you'll see him mention it more in the video, but... I didn't realize that Realm's been putting itself up to such a high pedestal.
Expecting big things. You can see the intense evolution from the very start. The launcher has a background image which actually moves very slightly and follows your cursor. So intense is this game's desire to be played, it will... I'll go with Wizard and we start the game. Top-down viewpoint, WASD movement, left-click fires an aimed shot, right-click explodes a magical bomb wherever my cursor is. You can see my HP and MP to the top.
Alright, so there's not much going on with the tutorial. It's pretty straightforward, but let's talk about the more important things. So he doesn't mention much. The tutorial kind of does its thing. It's changed over the years. I don't really know. I don't really think it's bad. I don't really think it's good, but it's just a simple tutorial. What can you say? But I don't think I've ever seen the journal because I guess it was released late into the game. But he makes a good point that it's just a fucking word dump,
Now get told about the journal, an in-game written tutorial. Another surprise. I was banking on the genre evolving to have in-game playable story-driven tutorials, but no, it seems the text dump won.
You know, and that's a pretty good point. I've seen other people mention this too, that it would be nice if they had like an NPC like actually explain the game to you when you join in, rather than having a journal. Especially since there's a lot of differences between when the game first came out and with the game now. There's not a lot of players playing right now, so most people will just join in, um, unless they have a friend already explaining it to them. Whereas when the game first came out, you often had people introducing it to someone and playing together. So that's actually a pretty good point, that they should add like quests and storyline to explain how to play.
Because Realm has evolved past the need for these petty things. Realm is gameplay in its purest form. It's a perfect numbers go up creature, and the most enlightened form of numbers go up is the cash shop. Okay, real talk. Realm of the Mad God is fine mechanically. It's fast, flashy, it controls smoothly, and the combat is responsive as hell, but that's basically all it is. There's very little story or plot or quest or anything you'd associate with the RPG acronym. It's about killing stuff, and that's it. After the short tutorial, which is actually quite nice, you're thrown into the Nexus, and now there's nothing to even hint at where to go. I figure out you're meant to walk north to these open-world killing map portals, but why is everyone just standing around doing nothing? Oh, don't worry, we'll find out soon enough. The main issue with the Nexus is how invasive and oppressive the cash shop is. It literally takes over the centre of the hub zone. Honestly, I was hoping to play the actual game before the cash shop was thrust on me, but this is so gratuitous. It's impossible to avoid. Microtransactions literally take up the majority of the central floor space of the opening area. So fine, we'll play it your way, oh evolved one. Let's look at the cash shop first.
This is actually like a really good point, and it's something that I never really realized was that detrimental to the game until I started seeing it from a new player perspective. Because as I mentioned before, with the changes from like the game when it first came out and now, was that, let's be honest, during the Wild Shadow days, there was a lot of shit that you can buy with fame. There was like Drake eggs and the fucking resurrection amulets and just random stuff that you can buy with fame as well as gold. But a lot of that's changed, and like it's not a good look that new players will come in and immediately see this shop. It kind of gives you the feeling of like those shitty mobile games where you start in, you instantly get a bunch of notifications telling you about things to buy before you actually experience the game. And he also mentioned how empty the Nexus was. It would be a good change to make it that all the things publicly displayed are fame only, and also have a lot of features like showing where to actually play the game, and maybe even giving you free stuff for exploring, being there for exploring and interacting with the Nexus, so that way players actually have a thing to do. He kind of goes in pretty in depth. You can tell he's pretty passionate about this topic, but I'd say this is kind of beating the dead horse already. A lot of Realm players already know this. So you have the shop already, and if you open it up, it's kind of out of the way. Most players wouldn't notice until they're like really ready to spend money on the game. And they've actually done a lot of good things. They've added a lot of tabs where you can see all the equipment already there without having to walk through the Nexus. And I feel like that's a better change for the shop, so they should make all gold items here only. Besides that, you have the beginner pack, and the beginner pack here, you have the paid one as well. That shit shouldn't be shown. In fact, I'd say that shit should cause fame. Like, why not? Have players know what to spend with in-game currency before they resort to spending to real-life money. And stuff like this should be shown in the Nexus, so that way they know what to work for when they start the game. But other than that, he just talks about the loot boxes and stuff, you know. Once again, beating the dead horse. But it's okay. It's nice to know that new players have the same qualms that veterans and current players have. Without further ado, if we go to 1045, we go into the first gameplay, baby. This is what we've all been waiting for. This is what most people see when they see a new player play the game.
All hail Cube. When you enter a world, you arrive on the beach. You'll also see a massive group of players just hanging out at the spawn site doing nothing. They have evolved beyond the need to seek out gameplay, and as we'll see later, they are waiting for gameplay to come to them, lying like an alligator waits for a gazelle. Don't check the accuracy of that metaphor, I don't know animals. We adventure forth. The world is full of small things which really want to die, so we bless them with our magical wizard blasts from our magical wizard stick and they ascend to heaven. Follow the red icon for my first quest and discover this crab. My first quest is to base this crab with my magical wizard power until it dies. Doing that gains me precious experience and I continue on to fill the world with my hot wizardy rage. I'm glad I've got this massive invasive wall of text to the top left obscuring a quarter of the playing space, because the only thing more fun than a bullet hell directionless MMO is one where I can't see the playing area.
And that's another good point that I wanted to mention. This is, I'd say, one of the other big issues for new players, and something that I've had to explain to some of my friends where I tried to get them to play the game, which is that the game doesn't really explain the UI. You know, they explain the actual gameplay, but you have situations like how to teleport to other players, how to change the opacity of other players, and having to hide the quest objectives like this that aren't really explained, which should be mentioned at the start of the game. Rather than maybe like the journal popping up, they should show like the important settings that you should change before you get into the game. Like a lot of other games where they have you change the brightness. In the case of Realm, they should have you change the UI to make it where you can see the opacity of other players and see the bullets of other players, because let's be honest, some people might be confused by that or even not have a good enough PC to run it.
Not been introduced to yet, like blacksmithing, so not too much help for a new player.
One of the other things I noticed was that I kept mentioning that more things should be shown in the Nexus rather than their specific zones, like the Tinkerer and the Forge and the daily quests. Those should all be in the Nexus, or at least some of it, so that way players know immediately what to expect. And it's even more helpful to have other players sitting around there, crowding around, so you'd know like where to look for. Another idea I had was the daily fame boxes whenever there's an event, having those publicly shown, so that way people don't miss out on them and don't need to like look at the Reddit or announcements online to know what things to get, along with just explaining to new players what these things are, because you can clearly see he's pretty confused by this as well.
And if you walk all the way to the edge of the Nexus, it's just a black void. It's not a consistent map. The rest of reality has clearly evolved away into nothingness. Finally accepting the insatiable, unstoppable march of time would render all things a blank and empty void. Back in the world, there really isn't anything to do. I follow the red square and kill this elf queen so hard she drops a dun.
I'd like to mention that this is also another really bad sign of Realm, where you have, I'd say we're at the halfway point of the video, and he's barely started playing, and he's already saying that there's not much to do. Realm is kind of a clusterfuck of a bunch of random things. You go through the tutorial, then you go through the journal, then you go through the Nexus, until you finally get to the gameplay, and most people will automatically assume that this is it. But that's the problem with there being 3 stages of the game. This is only early game, and most players don't realize that the mid game and late game are completely different from this first experience.
Dungeon. Not even kidding. Not a weapon or an armor, she just drops a dungeon. So after killing the elf princess, I rush up to the body and enter her hidden dungeon. Grow up. The dungeon is a forest maze. It's full of moths and evolved forest creatures and has this interesting effect where room connections are hidden under the tree canopy. All the enemies have this super irritating effect called Confuse, which randomizes your controls for a short time. Find and kill this giant moth boss and get teleported back to the Realm battle map. Get a red quest to go and kill a swarm, so I do that, and then a chimera looking thing, so I do that, and then a graveyard boss, so I go and do that, and this is all very repetitive. I know that enemies have different attacks or firing patterns, but there are so many enemies that no matter how many combinations of projectiles merge, they all end up as a lot of bullets. Just avoid them.
Here we have another 2 issues. The repetition I've noticed is that he's kind of in an empty server, and on top of that, there's just no players around. That's one of the biggest issues with the current game and the game when it first came out, was that I feel that new players should have an NPC guiding them, or a guide to instantly put them in a realm with a good amount of players, so that way they can actually interact. Because let's be honest, I enjoy Realm for the sandbox activity rather than it always telling me where to go. I get to choose what to do and when I want to do it. And rather than enemies coming at me, it just randomly happens as I explore. And a lot of that fun gets taken away when you don't have friends or other players to interact with.
Music also doesn't seem to fit the pace of the game either. Have a listen.
This shit was another thing that made me laugh too. In a lot of my streams, I fucking got livid at the audio and music of the game, because you could tell that they put in effort, but it's really slow and really simple compared to other games. I know some people might like that, but I'd say it would be nice if they have combat music or music depending on the location where you're at, because I'd say this music is pretty good, pretty chill, but I could see how it can get repetitive when he goes into... Eventually you die, and eventually you realize, what am I missing out on? So, let's be honest, this is the funny shit, dude. He's gonna teleport to the Godlands and instantly fucking die.
Fortunately, that only works when there is a critical mass of players to do this, and the much more likely scenario is you'll be teleported directly to a level 20 player, and then you'll get one hit by the enemies they are fighting because you are too weak, and so you restart. This mechanic perfectly illustrates that this game is not about slow, controlled progression. It's about fast, quick, extreme progression to the end game, and then a very quick death. So I've died.
So that's where he's getting it wrong. This is kind of not really how you should play the game, and this is often what I see a lot of new players doing. And even in examples of, like, whenever you see a new content creator trying out the game for the first time. And I'd say that's another problem with the lack of guidance in this game. It's nice to have the sandbox mechanic where you choose where you go and you can skip past actually doing the lowland enemies. But they really should have a better warning that either warns players not to teleport to a level 20 area, or warns players that they're in a dangerous zone when they're there. And I mean, that's another issue with not having enough players to warn him, or not having enough players to make the level 20 area more easier to level up in. Because one of the things that was really fun when the game was still new was having the experience level you up faster when you went to the Godland areas. And people have their qualms with fame trains, but that was honestly really fun for just skipping past having to level up to level 20 all the time, because that's honestly a really repetitive part of the game. But let's skip to his first interaction with the the bots selling goods.
By the new player spawn point. I guess some things never change. Back at the Nexus, I check out a few more.
You know, that's pretty self-explanatory. You know, the bots are an issue. I don't think they're ever going to go away.
More things. There's the Vault, which is a cross-character storage, allowing you to save valuable things between deaths and runs, and then there's the Blacksmiths, which uses resources you probably find in dungeons or buy from the
No, I'd say that's another issue. It's pretty confusing to see this wall of items that you don't know what the value is or what they do without proper explanation.
Shop or get from loot boxes to make better stuff. None of these apply to me, because I'm still on the endlessly throw yourself against quests to gain experience gameplay stage, so while I'm doing this, let's just have a read of some reviews. The game of my childhood, absolutely amazing.
Alright, let's not focus too much on this, but you know, I'm sure you'd already know what comments to expect. The childhood, and you got people complaining that of the STs and stuff. You know, once again, everyone knows about that issue. Then the soundtrack, that was pretty sad. I kind of like the old soundtrack. You know, the changes, the permadeath, you have these funny guys, solid for the first couple hours when he's fucking 8,000. I'm not even sure if I had that much playtime. You also have this dude telling you don't play it. You know, classic Rome players.
And now a strange thing happens. I'm grinding away, but then I'm suddenly instantly summoned and teleported into a group instance, along with a load of other people. I don't click yes, this just happens, and then everyone starts running, so I just follow them. And everyone starts shooting, so I start shooting. And we're breaking the walls down, and we're killing minions, and we're just gaining a load of experience really quickly. And I don't know what's happening, but it's probably good, so I just go with it. And then there's some guy spamming his Twitch account. So I follow this Zerg rush and we kill a boss, I think, and they drop a portal, so we all go into it, and then there's more enemies and more bosses, and here is the mad god himself. So we all run.
And I'm sure you can already know where this is going, you know? He keeps playing until
and the game resets, and oh my goodness, what a roll.
And I'd say that's another problem with the lack of guidance in this game. I'd say this was just a bad time and bad moment, because when Oryx's Castle came out, I had a lot of experience of just waiting around and not really knowing how to start Oryx's Castle, or most players taking a while to actually make it happen, where it felt like a once in a while situation. But as we all know, you can see down there that his realm probably got raided by people, and they instantly went to Oryx and kind of dragged them along. And you know, that's another problem with the lack of guidance. So it'd be nice if they explained what Oryx Castle is and warn him about the dangers before proceeding. Because that's something I also forgot, was the graveyards. They don't really fucking help, man. It's been a while since I played. Whenever I do play, I never notice the graveyard counter on before you enter a dungeon. And I'm sure most new players won't even understand what that means.
So they scream and they assume that you know what you're doing, and then someone else runs, so you run, and someone's leading but no one knows who, and then you're fighting the literal end game boss, and then everyone dies. I felt a lot of emotions during this, mainly confusion. I was lost, I had no idea where my cursor even was, and eventually I lost my player sprite in the mess of...
And once again, that's another good reason for them opening up settings before you start playing the game. Or either making it default where the player opacity is decreased and your cursor is more visible, and maybe even the bullets are hidden. It'd be nice to explain that to the players so people can choose to have them on to follow people or have them opt to focus on the game.
You wait long enough, a dungeon event just begins and you can follow the crowd and gain a load of experience and items. It's the most efficient way to play the game. I suppose one of the best aspects of Realm of the Mad God is you know if you like it or dislike it really quickly, because it shows you what it's all about really, really fast.
So I'd say that perfectly summarizes his experience with the game, and I'd say the experiences of all people. He's got a lot of right here and a lot wrong here. He mentions that most people will just sit around waiting for events to happen, which, I mean, with key popping events, you know, it's crazy that he's already noticed that about the game. It's kind of a sad state that it's in, because I'd say when the game was first released, it was a lot more active. You know, you had people actively clearing, you had people actively searching for dungeons and helping new players go through it, since everyone was relatively new. On the other hand, I'd say he's experiencing the issue with the difference between early game and late game, where, I mean, as we've seen here, you just play through randomly walking around until you either die or watch people defeat the boss. And there's a difference between leveling up constantly and following people around, and the mid to late game where you actually start to learn the mechanics and either strengthen your character, strengthen your skills, or start to like rush and solo dungeons and help other people. And that's something that's different from what he's experiencing now, which is kind of hard to explain. I don't know how they'd explain that to new players.
to know I'm playing a part, however small, in the forging of a new existence. I want to feel I'm an adventurer in an adventurous land, travelling through the harsh wilds or exploring the thriving towns, meeting the locals and getting involved in local troubles. Becoming known across the land, I want to know the evil threatening the land is more of a deep, multifaceted construct or a concept and is in some way commendable, making the ultimate decision to stand against it more of a moral choice and less of a big bad evil guy cliché. Realm of the Mad God, however, lets you go into a dungeon dropped by an elf. I do commend Realm of the Mad God for front-loading the gameplay experience and then just hoping you enjoy it enough to play it for a few thousand hours. At least it's honest with what you're going to get. There is a god, he is mad, he has a realm, go and shoot stuff until you die.
Alright, I'd say that kind of touches back upon what I just said, but there's some takeaway from that. You know, I feel that he feels this way due to a lack of guidance, which most new players experience. So either it's nice to add more story and more quests that are more straightforward, but at the same time, that's part of what makes Realm so fun, which is the sandbox aspect and the choice of making your own quests and making your own purpose, whether it is leveling up your character, strengthening them, or doing exaltations and endgame dungeons. And that's something that I don't know how to explain to new players until they get past early game, which, let's be honest guys, the early game fucking sucks. And I want to make a reaction to his second video, but at the same time I will be making a video discussing all the aspects and experiences that new players have to go through. Not really a PPE video, but a video really looking at what can be changed and trying to understand what new players will experience in the new game whenever they start. But I hope you guys enjoyed.